मैं बस लाइव जा रहा हूँ। ठीक है।
जी हमजा, अब आप नज़र आ रहे हैं।
Hello, Raees. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
I'm really sorry. I think it's there's something wrong with my internet. But yeah, uh, let's proceed with today's event. Welcome everyone. I hope you're all doing well. We're super excited to bring this amazing fireside chat on a practical intro to serverless with Raees Iqbal. He's the co-founder of SteelBrain. First of all, thank you so much, Raees, for being here today.
No worries. It's a pleasure. It's a bit too early, but still a pleasure.
Yeah, yep. I know it's really early on your end, but thank you for being here. So this session is exclusively for Pakistan Developer Forum community. We're here to talk about the power of going serverless and Race's journey working remotely with top ID companies around the world. So I'll give a quick intro about Race and then about the Pakistan developer community that we've built. This forum that we're trying to have a lot of developers, designers, and people from all technical backgrounds from across Pakistan to this place. So um, uh, with your humble intro, Raees Iqbal is a self-taught engineer building the future of scalable products. He's the co-founder of SteelBrain, recently worked as product engineer at Netlify. He worked on Netlify CLI and Netlify Build, a CI/CD platform furthering the cause of JAMStack. He also worked as a distributed system engineer at Serverless Inc., where he contributed to Serverless Framework and co-pioneered the Serverless Components project. Um, yep. And about the Pakistan developer community, the forum that we that is actually hosted by
I think Hamza dropped off. Um, just like let me ping him again and see if he can join, or should we continue?
uh,
Oh, you're back.
hello. Yeah. So extremely sorry for this inconvenience. I was just saying, like, let's proceed with today's session without any further delay and hear more about serverless from you.
Yeah, of course. My name is Raees. As you said, I would like to think that I'm a software engineer. Um, Brief intro on serverless. Serverless is a usually a set of technologies to enable developers to not think about the servers that their applications are running on. So serverless is Firebase, serverless is AWS Lambda, serverless is Google Cloud Data Store, Azure Functions, anything that you can deploy your application to, and you don't need to think about, oh, how much RAM do I have, or how much CPU cores do I have. If I'm having 10,000 more customers, do I need to upgrade my servers, and do I need to worry about the scalability, the uptime of these things? So serverless basically gives you the opportunity to focus on your business, the software that you're building, rather than the underlying infrastructure, managing the underlying infrastructure. So it helps you be more productive in your quest, in your business, and make best use of your time. I guess, yeah, that's would be an intro to serverless. Now we can go into different questions that you might have.
Yeah, so for sure. I know, like, so as you mentioned before to me when I was going, I was saying this to you that let's have a hands-on training session on serverless. So we
Right.
wanted to have this, like, an intro kind of an event
Mm-hmm.
for people to know more about serverless, and then we have these series of events for the PDF community where we go into more, like, technical kind of things. But for today, we have I'll just ask about basic questions regarding serverless for early
Mm-hmm.
stage developers or people who are trying to get this experience of serverless in the early stage of the
Right.
career with the cloud services and all.
Mm-hmm.
So in that regard, I just wanted to know that what are your thoughts on serverless versus cloud services providers like AWS, Google Cloud, and all.
Mm-hmm. So serverless essentially is uh, an architecture. So you can build that on AWS, you can build that on Google Cloud, Azure, or any other. IBM Cloud, I think, has serverless offerings. Alibaba Cloud has serverless offerings. So you can build that on any infrastructure that you have. And even if you don't have a public cloud infrastructure, you can. There are solutions like Kubeless or open functions where you can run that on Kubernetes, on your own on-premise system, on your um, cloud Kubernetes cluster. So basically, you you can kind of decouple the managing of servers from the developing of applications. So you can have one dedicated team, for example, to manage. If you are doing it your own way, your custom Kubernetes way, you can have your own team for managing the Kubernetes cluster, but your application development team doesn't need to know about the underlying servers and how to manage them, or how to manage the memory resources, and how to handle the scalability of it. So they just need to write the logic for responding to the request that comes in. And it's an event-based system. So you get an event. It can be different kinds of event. It can be an HTTP event. You get an HTTP request as an event, or it could be a timed event. So you have a timed thing going on, a cron job, or it could be another service calling. For example, you can have an event on your database whenever an item is added. added to the database, send me an event and what is added. So you can do asynchronous database operations based on that. So for example, you want to say, oh, I want to send an email whenever a user is added to the database, but I don't want to send it in a blocking way, so the user adding and email sending is not coupled. So let's say you're adding the user and then you're sending the email, but what if sending the email goes wrong? So your request will fail most likely. As an application developer, it's a very painful thing to kind of decouple those things and still make sure they work. In this way, you can have an event on your database that says, oh, whenever a user is added, asynchronously send an email. So if an email sending fails, you still have the user added, the user can still log in, they still get the correct screen on the application, they can still proceed. So those are some of the technical benefits that you kind of get from serverless. We can go into more details.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you so much for that. And talking about events that you mentioned, event based or functions. I have another, like, a quick question, which is, there's these cloud services providers who provide platform as a service, versus I've heard,
Right.
like, that, so serverless, which is a function as a service. So how do
Mhm.
you differentiate these two for, like, for some early stage developers to know, before they start the development or something, like, what is the actual difference between function as a service or platform as a service?
So function as a service is a little bit, you can say, low level API. It doesn't function as a service is just one part of the serverless. So the idea again is to not think about servers. For example, in the database as well. So database can be serverless. For example, in Firebase, base is serverless. In Google Cloud, there used to be a product called Data Store. I'm not sure if it's still around, but that's a serverless database. It's basically a key value database. You can do other kinds of queries on it beyond key value. Similarly, AWS has DynamoDB, which is one of kind of the best serverless databases out there. And Amazon.com itself is written largely on DynamoDB and serverless services like AWS Lambda. So it has that tremendous ability to scale very, very, very rapidly and then scale back down. So it doesn't really have to be functions as a service. It can be databases, it can be other services, as long as you don't have to think about the underlying resources or manage the underlying resources. Um, I would say platform as a service, you can think of um, different different platforms. I guess Webflow is a very recent website builder kind of platform where you can build your website, you can add posts, you can add different products. It's kind of similar to they've kind of solidified WordPress-like workflow into their own system, and you can use that as a platform. But or you can host that on serverless. You can host other things on uh, on a public cloud. Sorry. Um, but then it's a choice between how much does the packaged service that you're getting is giving you the thing that you want. So at the end of the day, you want to build a business, you want to serve your customers. Is the platform solving your problem? If it is, then very good, very fine. But if it is not, then you have to do some kind of custom development, you have to build some custom application. So there can be two ways of building custom applications. There's a stateful way, or you can say the traditional way, where you have a server, you're managing the server, you're installing software on the server, and then you are deploying your website on the server. You usually have Apache, Nginx, you have PHP, Python, whatever application that you are running, and then you are also managing the server itself. You're taking care of the updates, you're taking care of the kernel upgrades, and all of those things. In the serverless environment, you just write your application code and you say SLS deploy or CDK deploy or whatever applications, whatever framework you're using. You just use the deployment system to deploy your application instead of kind of managing the underlying infrastructure yourself.
Awesome. Thank you so much for the detailed information on that. Moving forward, actually, so for this specific community of, the PDF Pakistan Developer Forum, there's a diverse background of engineers that we have, but on the same time, we do have startups over there in the
Right.
PDF. Building big, recently we had this remote based hack fest where we had 3000, more than 3000 participants, a lot of teams picking up a lot of different challenges from Redis to Swivel, to JSPank's open API. So they were little startups which were forming up. So how do you what do you suggest for those startups if they want to go with the the serverless, depending upon their products and all?
Yeah, so again, so serverless is just a tool. What you want to ultimately keep in mind as a startup is not like that's one of the mistakes that people make. I made a lot of them. Is that you are not building a technology, you're building a product, right? If you're building a technology as a product, that's good, but
Yeah,
ultimately you're building a product and you want to make the best decision for your customers, how to best serve your customers. So if a platform
yeah,
out there like WordPress or whatever is solving your problem, then I would say 9 out of 10 choose that platform, especially for a startup. I am a kind of I am a fan of packaged services where I don't have to manage the infrastructure or manage the service itself. If I can pay $20 and get the features I want, I would usually go that route. But again, a lot of times you are building custom products. So look to see if you don't need to build that specific feature that you are trying to build. Look to see if you can find it as a package service from whatever cloud provider you're using, from Google Cloud, Azure, or AWS. If you cannot find it as a package service, for example, I'll give you an example on very good example on this. So a lot of, I would say most of the applications that you're normally building need some kind of user database, user management system, right? You have users signing up, you have to send them SMS code for verification, let's say. You have to send them an email, you have to have the ability to log out or change reset password. So that's a kind of a good surface area where almost every application that you're going to be building is going to be needing that. um, I would say don't build that. 9 out of 10 don't build that. For in case of AWS, you have Amazon AWS Cognito Services. So Cognito Services is again a serverless, serverless, not exactly database, serverless authentication service, you can say. Um, in a way that you can create a user pool. So user pool is you can think of it as a directory for the users. So you can create a user pool and you can integrate in that into your application. So all the user sign up functions, user sign in function, user reset password, All those things are managed by AWS Cognito. So you have a bunch of your time back. You can focus on your actual product rather than building the user sign up functionality, for example. And then you can integrate that into your application. It has very good extensibility. For example, you want to do some custom action on when the user signs up. You can have the sign up event come to your application as a serverless event, as a or to your traditional application. So you can do whatever you want with the user after they've signed up. You can get the information, and it's integrated very well into the other services, for example, API gateway. So again, uh, you want to optimize your time and use the package services as much as possible. Cognito is serverless offering for managing users. Um, um, you traditionally need some kind of HTTP server to serve your application. In this on this kind of surface, there's API gateway, AWS API gateway. If you're talking about AWS, Google has similar things, Azure has similar things. So you can use API gateway to do the routing itself rather than building some kind of application router or managing Nginx or Apache on your server. So that kind of decouples it further. So again, you're taking a bunch of your time back. You probably don't need to hire one more person to manage those resources. As a startup, it's very, very important to stay lean and stay focused on the actual product that you're building. So serverless helps you be more focused on the product. That is the ultimate goal of serverless.
Awesome. That was such a amazing explanation, and there's like a question, even a question from Daniel in at the YouTube, and also like someone asking a question at Facebook as well. Can we use serverless technology for apps that have millions of users? Because you were just talking about the startups and the scalability and all. So that is why I just quickly picked up this question, and so that it can be answered right away.
Yeah, so the probably the best thing about serverless is pretty much free. So up
Yeah.
until like after you have kind of hit 100,000 users, maybe millions of views, then you might need to pay like $25, $30 a month. But up until that, most of the technologies that I've talked about are pretty much free. So in on AWS, for example, um, um, you get, I think, 2 million Lambda invocations. So Lambda is the compute. So another thing I should probably clarify is you can try to break down your application as much as possible. So our traditional application can be broken down into four components. So think of any application, an HTTP application, a website, for example. So website has an HTTP server. Website has a compute system. So that could be your Express app or your Python Flask app or whatever app. And then website has a database, and then website also has a storage system where they're storing the file, let's say the images or videos or whatever resources they have. So these are the four components of any website. So you can substitute each of these components with different services from whatever cloud provider that you're using, and try to stick with one cloud provider. I generally stick with AWS. People stick with Azure and Google Cloud. They're just as good. I like AWS because I'm more familiar with it. Whatever you're most familiar with, just go with that. And so you can substitute the HTTP part of your application with AWS API Gateway. You can substitute the compute with AWS Lambda, the database with DynamoDB or MySQL or whatever databases. They have a bunch of them. and then the storage, the object storage with AWS S3. So you have all three of these basic components in a form of serverless services already provided by AWS. So API Gateway, Lambda, DynamoDB, and S3. All four of them are serverless. You don't need to pay anything uh, up until like you hit more than 100,000 users. Then you might need to pay a couple of dollars a month, and then again, it's extremely cheap. And the good thing about it is that you have don't have to pay for reserved capacity. So in a traditional application, let's say you want to plan for 100,000 users. So you have to have the beefiest system, like the best core, the best RAM in a server to serve the 100,000, because you want to make sure that if 100,000 people are using your website at once, they don't get errors, they don't get delays, they have a snappy experience at your application or website. Um, so you have to pay for the best capacity that the maximum capacity that you're using, and you have to pay it kind of upfront. What serverless does is it's an event-based payment system, a payment scheme, you can say. So let's say for most of the month, for 29 days, you don't get any users, or you get like 10,000 users a day. It's still free, but it's not, it's not charging you anything because you're still in the free quota. There's free quota, and then after you exceed the free quota, then you have to pay for things. So for the first 29 days, you don't pay for anything. The last day, let's say you have 1 million users. So a traditional application will 100% go down because you haven't planned for that capacity. You haven't kind of put in those resources and provisioned those resources. And even if you have provisioned those resources, you still can't be really sure that this service is going to perform as good as you thought it would. Maybe you did some kind of configuration error, and then everything is bust. So the good thing about serverless is battle tested. Is Google is serverless. Google's internal system is, everything is serverless. Amazon is serverless. Every kind of big application that you can think of is serverless. Um, so again, Amazon is using AWS Lambdas, DynamoDB as a database. So it can handle very, very huge capacity. So millions of users is nothing for it. Um, and it can scale up and down very easily. So you essentially never have to think about scalability. It will take care of it um, by itself. So yeah, serverless is perfect for startups. Um, in If you need to build custom applications, but it can scale very seamlessly without you needing to do anything about it.
Awesome. Yeah. So I think we talked about so many advantages of serverless. So I was just thinking, like, if it's like so perfect, like, but still, since you have this extensive experience with serverless,
Mhm.
just wanted to ask if there's any disadvantages of serverless as well, like for for individuals or companies trying to move to serverless or thinking about server. What are the pros and cons? We've discussed a lot of advantages, and scaling, integrations, flexibility, and all. So how
Mhm.
about the disadvantages? Because we often see, like, even Google getting, Google or Facebook getting down or something. So
Yeah.
anything like that. So yep.
Yeah, so at the end of the day, you want to make sure that, like, as a startup or as a company building a product, your main focus should be, how do I make the user experience better? How, because user experience is the only thing that pays you. Like, if users like your product, they need your product, then they will pay you. If they don't, then they won't. So at the end of the day, I would say, don't focus too much on technology or whatever kind of technology that you're using. For example, Um, I have been working in serverless for like 4 or 5 years. You've given my introductions. I kind of co-pioneered some of these things, but for the recent two projects, actually, one of the project that we recently um, sold off was built on WordPress, using WordPress.com, not even our own custom hosting. We're using packaged hosting from WordPress.com for $36 a month, and the project sold for a six-figure amount. So it's not about what kind of technology that you're using, or what kind of it's not about technology. I would say it's best tool for for the job, but then again, you want to make sure that you're working with something that you're familiar with. How can you get to what you want as soon as possible with as little effort as possible? That should be the ultimate goal. How can you serve your customer better? So in that case, WordPress made sense for that. We didn't want to build a whole custom um, content management system, even though it was a kind of a complex product. But that problem could have been much easily solved with WordPress. So we just went with WordPress.com with the package services, and yeah. So yeah,
Uh,
the right tool for the job, and then do whatever you are most familiar with. How can you get to what you want to get to as fast as possible, with as little effort as possible?
Okay. And I have another question from there's like uh, I mean, like a lot of engineers who are trying to like build on serverless, or just build a lot of stuff on serverless, or already working at AWS or Google Cloud or everywhere. These cloud service providers, they actually give you this access to the to all the servers and the resources. You can you can have the access to the virtual machines, operating systems, or runtime environments. But in the case of like serverless, the provider is actually scaling and managing all these
Right, right.
resources. So do you think it's like it's a disadvantage at some at some extent, in terms of that you don't have that much command onto those servers? Secondly, like if what if like you want to change your provider,
Mhm.
because like then you might need to recode the whole thing again for the second
Right, right.
provider. So what's in terms of the code reusability and all, what do you think about that?
Right. So that's actually a very good question, and that's like one of the concerns people have when they're getting into serverless is, are we going to be vendor locked in? And I would say yes, but that can be a good thing or a bad thing depending on what kind of system or what kind of thing that you're building. Serverless is usually very, very cheap. So even like as I said, if you had 1 million customers, and I have built and worked with services that have more than 100,000 users, so I can tell you about that from a personal experience. For up to like 200, 300,000 users, and similar views on your website or application or requests, you probably don't need to pay anything. Like you'd probably at most be paying $30 a month, $20 a month. Um, but then again, as you said, um, you are building something very specific for whatever platform that you're building it on. So serverless, there's kind of some differences. For example, you can there's some configurability. For example, you can choose the runtimes. So serverless on AWS has different options. You can go with Node.js, Python, Ruby, Java, .NET, Go, and then you can also provide your own custom runtime. Let's say you want to build applications in I don't know, Rust lang or some other language that's exotic or not commonly not supported by them. You can provide your own custom there's a thing called bootstrapping. You can provide your bootstrapper that will run your application, and then AWS will take care of managing that thing. And so it's very similar to the provided runtimes, except that now you have a choice of actual whatever language that you're using. For example, PHP. One of my projects last year was building a PHP platform. Um, that could run WordPress on serverless architecture on AWS. So PHP is by default not supported, but I added a custom runtime to make that happen. Then you have a choice in terms of resources. You have a choice of RAM. You can select based on how much RAM your application you think needs. Let's say you think your application needs 2 GB of RAM at most. You can specify, oh, every time you run this application, give me 2 GB RAM. So no matter if your application is running once or it's running 10,000 instances at the same time, every instance is getting 2 GB RAM because you've specified give me 2 GB RAM every time. And you can go up to 10 GB or down to 128 MBs basically. And gives you a lot of flexibility in terms of compute resources and RAM. So these are the two things usually people have from, let's say they have some kind of exotic workflow. They are resizing images or working with media or need to copy something into RAM and then process it. That's something they can configure in AWS. Um, of the other thing that people might want to know about is that there's a limit on how long you can run each request, and that's on AWS is 15 minutes. 15 minutes is the maximum one request can go up to. So you can have a function running for 15 minutes. There's some trickery that you can do to kind of pause it and resume it. So you have these exactly the same thing happening, but it's paused and then you resume it. So it can go more than 15 minutes, but by default, you can make it go for up to 15 minutes, which should be the at, at most the time you should be spending on one request. Again, it has to be request or event based system.
Yeah.
um, yeah, so vendor lock-in, I would say for startups, I am pretty sure in my experience it's a good thing because vendor lock-in is also gives you a lot of time. It frees up your time. So the thing, if you're going with the custom development, you are spending a lot of time actually bootstrapping and managing all of those services. I've been through that process many times, so I know how much time is actually wasted on those resources, and people can. Um, I would so yeah, I would say try out serverless, learn serverless, try it out, see if you, build one or two applications with it, get into practical use, and see how much different it is from your traditional workflow, and see if you can fit your workflow into serverless architecture. Most of the workflows can go pretty easily into the serverless architecture. So yeah, try it out and see. If you don't want to be vendor locked in, there's a choice of kubeless or open events. I think open fast. Sorry, you can go for open fast that allows you to run serverless serverless applications on a Kubernetes cluster. So you can have an in-house Kubernetes cluster um, that you can run your applications on, and then you can move them around in different cloud providers without changing much. So yeah.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Race. That was really, really helpful, even for myself as well. So, tons of questions, that we have over here. But I think, because we're going to do this speaker series on serverless, for the Pakistan developer community in the future. There's a lot of people like myself and everybody at PDF and other communities that want to know about your journey, from a little town in Pakistan to first working remotely with these top IT companies in the world, and then this remote lifestyle that you have. um, just growing up where you were, your hobbies and everything. So that's let's just move this discussion to that side, before it gets too technical. For and let's save all this technical stuff for the next one. Yep.
Cool. Yeah, so I grew up actually like my early childhood was not even in a town or city, not even in a village. I grew up in the middle of nowhere. Um, in Pakistan, especially in Punjab, there's deras, I guess, in other provinces as well. I grew up on a dera in the middle of our farmland. So my family is traditionally farmers. Um, and I grew up on a farm house, you can say, data. Um, and when I was relatively young, probably 8 or 9, we moved to a small town called Pindi Bhatia. It's near Faisalabad or Chineod or Hafizabad, you can say. If you ever gone from Lahore to Islamabad or Lahore to um, Faisalabad, even I think you have to go through Pindi Bhatia, or you have to kind of move
Yeah.
through Pindi Bhatia. So I grew up in Pindi Bhatia. I did my metric in Pindi Bhatia Government High School, Pindi Bhatia. I in my kind of primary years, I remember um, sitting on tarts on the
Right.
ground.
Yeah.
So you know. And yeah, I was in ICS program in for my intermediate in government college Pindivatiya when I kind of I always been kind of into computers and software, but I didn't know too much about it. I knew some like I kind of tried to figure out HTML and CSS because it is kind of more approachable than other programming languages, you can say.
Yeah.
Um, and I had kind of always tried to build websites because it's cool and having a website. So there was a bunch of free website services available, and I would try to build my own websites and customize and add images and all of that. But then I found out this video from Mark Zuckerberg and a couple of Bill Gates and a couple of other tech founders. Code.org. They founded this organization called Code.org, and they had sponsored a company called Codecademy,
Yeah.
where you can learn basics of programming. And I was, very very excited about that. Me and my younger brother, we started learning about that when I was in college. Um, and after we had kind of cleared the basics JavaScript, CSS, and Java, HTML courses, we started working on freelancer.com. Worked there, very small projects. I think our first project was like uh, $2 or something. The second was the second was $50. So making just small little changes for people and getting paid for it. Then learning on the job mostly. I never uh, never had a computer science class, a real computer science class. The computer science teacher we had in our college, like he couldn't the book, the intermediate computer science book is in English, but unfortunately he couldn't even read English, so it was quite a struggle in the school. So yeah, mostly learned on the job, learned from Google, Stack Overflow, copy pasting, and kind of worked on it for years and years. And for I guess for the first 2 or 3 years, we were working probably 14 to 15 hours a day, basically waking up and working, and stopping only when we needed to go to sleep, which was probably not a good idea, but it worked for the time. um, so yeah, that's um, we got involved. We tried a bunch of things. We tried to build a couple of startups. We actually tried to build a Pakistani social network in like 6 7 years ago, um, which was stupid in retrospect, but it was because it was such a large project. But we got into that, and we learned so many things from trying to build these really outrageous kind of projects. Um, um, and I think from within some of those projects, we got involved into open source on GitHub. So my brother especially, he used to be, I think he's pretty much still is, an open source rock star. So he had I think like 44 million npm package downloads, and he built this editor that Atom editor had recently come about. So he built this extension for Atom editor that allowed people to lint their code. So a linter for Atom editor, and that became the default linter for Atom. And that kind of grew into a more opportunistic kind of popularity, where people reached out to give us jobs. So he got offered a job at a company that was using Atom Linter to build their own product. um, I went through a very similar kind of process to end up at Serverless as a front end engineer at first. And then because I'd never worked in a traditional software company, so they kind of hired me as a front end engineer, and I worked with the team and kind of got familiar with the process. And they realized that I had quite a range of experiences in other things as well, especially in Node.js. So they gave me this role of distributed systems engineer, and I got to work with some of the best, brightest people in probably the world, building the best, brightest software. Uh, we built the serverless components project, which is one of their main offerings, I think. Um, yeah, then I moved to Netlify. I joined the developer experience team at Netlify. Um, helped kind of build Netlify Dev. Netlify Dev is a so Netlify again is a kind of in the serverless JAMStack space. They allow you to build and run websites pretty easily. I would say pretty much every startup should at least check out Netlify. Most of the websites, especially the static websites and React-based websites, they can be very easily deployed on Netlify. So yeah, Netlify. I worked on Netlify CLI, um, contributed to the Netlify build system, which is the CI/CD system. Um, yeah, that's pretty much it. And now I'm working on a couple of personal projects. I've founded a company along with my siblings. All of my siblings, we are four of us, three brothers and one sister. All of us are into technology, and we founded a company, and we're building different things. And yeah, I think. You're breaking up. I can hear you. See you.
Yep.
Yeah, so work-life balance, I would say that especially when you're starting out, um, we had a very kind of intensive start where, as I mentioned, we were working like 15 hours a day for a couple of years, which was probably not right and not good for multiple reasons. Especially, it's not very good on your health. Um, I would say don't work more than 8 hours. I don't usually work more than 8 hours now, but now I can afford to say that because I've kind of built my life around around that. Previously, I could not. So it's, you can probably push yourself a little bit in the beginning, especially if you're young. But if you're not, if you're above 22, 23, I would say don't push yourself, and especially don't push yourself if you're living outside of your house, outside, away from your family. If you're living by yourself, don't push yourself too hard, because these are the things you don't really realize at the time. But when you are living in a family, there's people taking care of you, people giving you food on the right time, people asking you to do other chores so you can be distracted, which is nuisance at the time, but this in retrospect is good that you kind of taking break from your work. So be with the family if you can, and don't work yourself too much. uh, Things will be all right. Just focus on learning things as much as possible rather than repeating most of the stuff, and try to focus on your customers. I think that's one of the lessons that you learn as a software engineer. When you get started into software engineering, you're all about building cool things. Oh, this is so cool, this is so good, I'm going to be building a social network, and all of that. Don't build cool things, build boring things. Build things that people actually need. People don't need cool things, right? People need to solve their most trivial problems, like a khata system for your shopkeeper. Build it for free. Your neighbor shopkeeper, build him a khata system for free, and you learn so much th- things out of it. um, you can build another, you can iterate on that, use things like GitHub, and collaborate. So you can iterate on that and improve in that, and maybe you can build that into project, into an actual product that they will pay for because they need those features that are going to be added. So have paying customers if you can from the very beginning. Have customers if you can, rather than building things out of thin air. Have customers and listen to customers, and talk to them, and then that will kind of help you with work life balance as well, because then you are kind of actually going out and talking to people rather than sitting in and working all day. Um, Eat good. Don't eat too much junk food. That'll give you pimples. That's something I can say from experience, especially when you're young. The If whatever you're building is eating, for example, soft drinks like um, that have lots of carbs in them, lots of sugar, burgers, especially the buns. They have surprising amount of sugar. They can give you pimples. That's life advice that I'm giving you. So yeah,
From serverless to pimples.
so don't eat too much junk food. Try to eat as much home cooked food as possible.
Yeah.
Um, Try to get 8 hours of, that's something you should never ever compromise on. Try to get 8 hours of sleep. And if you have an Apple Watch, or if you can afford an Apple Watch, get an Apple Watch. I think second series also supports sleep tracking. There's this app called Pillow. This is only $2. So get that app. You can track your app and how good, track your sleep and how good it was. Try to score more than 90% and 8 hours, and you will feel the difference in your life in general. You'll feel that you're much more productive, you're much more clear about your thought process, and you can make better decisions in life. Yeah, that's work life balance.
Thank you so much, for that. Well, so my last question before we kind of wrap up this session, which is what's your favorite open source project? Either one that you loved working. I know, you mentioned being one of the founding engineers at Serverless, Netlify, and all. But your personal favorite, open source, project. Because I know Anis who built this npm packages and all for the
Right.
art, and all. So just have this curiosity around that. Yep.
um there's a bunch of open source projects. So my favorite, I would say, Netlify is actually like even more than serverless,
Yep.
for especially for startups. A lot of things that they're doing, and I'm talking about serverless framework, not serverless as an architecture. So serverless framework is more for custom development. That's also open source. Netlify CLI is open source. You can build so many things with not Netlify CLI directly, but um, uh, these days, Svelte is probably my favorite open source project. It's a website builder, and
Yeah.
it's so simple, even compared to other. I've used a couple of website builders based on React and other services. So it's called Svelte, 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 and it's very easy for the beginners to get started with this, because it's very close to bare bones HTML, but it's very featureful. You have to kind of learn it if you want to take a full advantage of it, but you can get started very easily. It's like just building Svelte files, and they're all you can build HTML files, and it'll turn it into a proper dynamic website. So
Yeah.
go check out Svelte. Svelte Kit is a very cool project. Um,
Yeah.
it's open source. Try to get involved with the open source, not as just to get involved, but the things that are, if you're using open source thing, try to report issues, even if um, sometimes you're kind of intimidated. You don't think, oh, people will get offended if I write this stupid issue and I don't know too much about this project. Just try to get involved, try to interact with the community. There will be people who will help you out. There might be some people who are not very ideal, but there will be more people who are willing to help you out. So try to get involved with GitHub and GitHub projects, and report issues. Try to make like small changes, maybe in the documentation, maybe like one line change that you think, oh, you made that change in your application, other people might find it useful. Create a pull request for that, and you'll see it's usually a good world out there in open source.
Awesome. So, just although I said that was the last question, but I just wanted to tell most of the participants, especially some engineers joining us from the remote base, that so remote base is actually has this huge pool of engineers that are working with the React and Mern stack. So
Mhm.
because you're yourself a React engineer, and you contributed to these big open source projects. So where do you see React and React Native, and these technologies in the next 3 or 5 years, and the engineers working on those frameworks, overall JavaScript, just to summarize
Right,
this session.
right.
Yeah,
So yeah, I would say, as a software engineer, you keep in mind that you are not there to build applications. You are there to solve problems, right? Your primary focus should be on solving problems. So you can solve a problem with React, with I don't know, Angular, with other kinds of framework. I don't think it matters too much what kind of framework you're using, as long as you are most productive at it.
yeah,
So use a framework that you're most productive at, and you'll probably be fine. Um, in terms of what kind of things that you should be focused on for future, kind of making sure that you have a job in the future, or you have a better job in the future, is I would say React is pretty good. I would I my general strategy has been to kind of learn a couple of things, even though I'm not gonna use them. But especially not when I'm actually trying to build something, but when I have some free time on my hand, or when I am traveling, or when I'm doing something that's not very important. I tried out Svelte, for a very small project, side project that I was building. So side projects are a very good way to learn new things. Try to
yeah,
use different technologies in side projects. So it's generally a good idea to learn a couple of things, and uh, keep an eye out for new things that are coming around. I can't really tell you much about like what's the future is going to be like, because
yeah, for sure. I was
future
just talking,
future.
asking you in terms of being a super amazing React developer, and contributing to that community. But yeah, I totally get your point. So, the time is also we're also right on time. I guess. That brings us to the end of this session, and thank you so much, Race, for being here, and for your time. Especially, I know you're in Canada, and at this time it's pretty much pretty early over there, and you're still with us. For and thank you for your for your support during this event, and of course we'll be having more of these next time, the next more detailed technical session on serverless. And I would
I think.
share a link with you. Yeah, so I've already shared this link with participants to join the Pakistan Developer Forum,
Mm.
which is this community that we're trying to build, as I mentioned earlier. So there's different channels over there. Just like Stack Overflow, you have these. It's not just a Stack Overflow, but yeah, I'm just trying to give a technical side to it as well. But yeah, there's a lot of different channels Slack community, that React community, Flutter community. So we'll definitely add this serverless community over there, and you can join this. Everyone can actually join this community, and interact with great engineers like yourself, and have these amazing discussions, and stay tuned for more of these sessions coming in the future. So thank you so much, Race, again, for your time.
Yeah, it was a pleasure, and yeah, I think you invited me into Pakistan Dev Forum.
Yeah,
I'm available there if anybody needs me. Would love to do this again.
yeah.
Um, and yeah, thank
And
you for having me.
yeah, yeah, and sorry for the inconvenience in the beginning. I had something with my internet. Since not everyone is so lucky sitting in Canada like yourself, as it's still Pakistan, right? But these things don't stop us doing these amazing
Exactly.
things that we're trying for the community. So thank you
Exactly.
so much, and take care of yourself. See you soon.
See you.
Bye
Bye.
bye.